So, hello everyone, and welcome to the second of our Empowerment at Home Energy Efficiency Webinars for Change. This month, we will be talking about all things heat pump. So we've got two speakers this evening. How the evening is going to work is that we're going to have a talk from Andrew, who is a Southeast London-based energy consultant for Econic Energy and organiser of the Heat Pump Unconference. He's going to talk to us about the technical aspect of heat pumps, a bit about how they work, installation, and touch upon grants and discounts that are available to support you to access them. Then we're going to have Anna. Anna is a Selce member and one of our voluntary directors. She was an initial member of the Future Fit Homes working group and became a pilot customer. So she's made considerable changes in her home to reduce her household carbon emissions as part of her retrofit journey. And one of those changes is, of course, a heat pump. And then an introduction to me. My name's Amelia, and I am an outreach officer in the Future Fit Homes team at Selce. So for people who don't know, Selce is Southeast London Community Energy. We are a community energy cooperative that were founded in 2014 by a group of local people who wanted to see localised climate action and work together for a cleaner, fairer future. And these webinars are a part of our Future Fit Homes project, which is a project supporting people to access available discounts and grants, expert advice, and support to start on their retrofit journey. So yeah, thank you so much for joining. Without further ado, I will hand over to Andrew to talk us through the technical bits. Thanks, Andrew.
Hi there. So I'm just going to share my screen, and we practiced this, haven't we? So let's see what happens. There we go. Now, then I do slideshow. So can you see me?
Perfect.
Okay. So I've got loads of slides, but I'm going to whiz through most of them because, and you guys will send the slideshow to you if you want to see it at another time. So we all know about heat pumps and decarbonisation. We understand that. These are some of the other guys in my team who are very useful people. So why heat pumps? As you probably know, a huge proportion of our total carbon footprint is heating. I think if we all stopped flying, that would be 7%. So if we all stopped flying, that would just be 7%. But heating, if we all turned from gas to pure electric, we cut by 23%. So it's a huge difference. So yeah, it's a biggie. Getting off gas is just a really big part of decarbonisation. Now, the good news is that the government's pretty keen on that we do it. So £7,500. So everyone gets that. It doesn't matter what state your house is in. It doesn't matter what your EPC is. It doesn't matter if you've got insulation or not. You still get the £7,500 towards the heat pump install. Installations are still fairly pricey. So you might have to spend £5,000 on top of that. But anyway, everyone gets the grant, which is great upfront. So yeah, the government's doing their bit really. Well, taxpayers are doing their bit, you could say. Okay, so the most useful way of explaining a heat pump, you probably know, is that it moves heat. It doesn't create heat; it moves heat. In the same way as a fridge moves heat from inside the fridge to outside the fridge, a heat pump moves heat from outside into the house. And it uses electricity to do that. And the most amazing thing is that if you use 1 kilowatt of power to move the heat, you actually get possibly another 3 kilowatts of power from the outside. So it's more than 100% efficient. So it's not just burning something, it's not making the heat, it's moving the heat, which is why it's this incredible invention, really, this concept of using the refrigerant cycle. Now we all know that solar panels as well is great, and you can get if you can hook in with solar panels and a battery. We also know, of course, electricity is about 4 times the price of gas, so you can save money. Most people who have a heat pump do save money, but it's still, you've got to work it because you've got to have a low tariff electricity. So personally, I never try and sell a heat pump on running costs, but I think most people who have a heat pump do actually save compared to gas. It just sort of turns out that way. So blah blah blah. So let me just explain that the main cultural difference really with a heat pump is that it's slow and steady. So you're not whacking it on. It's not like the old gas boiler, whack it on, turn it off, off and on. It's slow and steady. Really important. So that we size the heat pump for this slow and steady heat. In other words, whatever heat is needed in the house, it's basically providing that, and it slowly ramps up when it gets hot, when it gets colder outside, and slowly ramps down when it gets warmer outside. So just to talk about installation, we do a heat loss calculation. We work out each room, how much heat is needed in each room, and we make sure that the radiator is the right size for that. We obviously hook in with integrating if you're doing
Thanks, Kurt.
a refurb. Hello. And then we obviously have to work out the pipe run, because we have the heat pump outside, then you have the pipes coming in. We have to sort of work out how that's going to work. You need a hot tank. If you've got existing hot tanks, sometimes we can repurpose that. If you've got a combi boiler where you don't have a hot tank, obviously we have to find a place for a hot tank. So there are these little teething things, but my company has put in 70 heat pumps in London over the last year. So in all kinds of houses, big solid brick houses, all kinds of houses. One of the main myths is that you can't do a heat pump in a solid brick building. Now I have a solid brick Victorian terrace, and I've got a heat pump, and it works just fine. We do these big London 3-4 story solid brick houses. Heat pumps work just fine. So you don't need extra insulation. Doesn't have to be a modern house. You don't need underfloor heating as well. So these kind of the myths, the old myths about you got to have a suitable house and all that kind of thing, it's just not true. We make sure the heat pump is the right size for your property. We make sure that the radiators are a good size, so that you can have a nice efficient system, and that's it really. It's not that hard. That's the sort of calculation I do. You can see, we work out all the rooms, the room temperatures. That's the total heat there. So that's the sort of work I do. I do the calculations, and then you can see there's a heat pump. No surprise, that's what a heat pump looks like. They do obviously have different shapes and sizes, and then the hot tank. So sometimes we have to squeeze a hot tank into a little corner, and there's also these very small sun amps, which are the phase change water or heat storage. So there are lots of different options, different sizes of hot tank, because obviously we need to try and fit them into London homes, which aren't always huge. So a few basics. We obviously need to make sure that air can get round the heat pump. Because obviously we're extracting heat from the air, so there needs to be good airflow. We make sure that the neighbours, the sound assessment is correct, and so the heat pump is either quiet enough or far enough away from your neighbour's window. So there are bits and pieces of that we assess, obviously, and the Valent 5 kilowatt is what I've got there, and you've got the Valent 7 kilowatt. So we do a range of heat pumps: Valent, Daikin, and Samsung. We don't do every heat pump because you have to learn all the ways of the different heat pumps. So we do these three brands and different sizes, of course, of them. But very important there we go. So you can sort of hide your heat pump a bit. I don't know if you can see. Can you see that? Oops. So you can cover and do clever things. I've got actually a plant on top of my heat pump, so I actually grow strawberries on top of my heat pump. So there's things you can do if you don't like the look of one. Some people do, but you can sort of hide it a bit. There's a little diagram. There's the heat pump there outside. We find a place for it. Then obviously we have to work out how to put the pipes where the tank's going to go. So that's the kind of fun, the tricky bit of putting heat pump in. but we manage it. So yeah, there we go. Lots of heat pumps going in. I live in South London, in Dulwich. So you can see, we see my heat pump as well on Nesta, Nesta. I do this thing about, you can, look at a heat pump. So that's worth, I don't know if you share that. Nesta, find a heat pump. I'm on there, and so it's a really good way, because people really need to see and hear one. And the more that they're out there, the better. So there we go. Lots of nice reviews, etc., etc. So there we are. Yeah, just to finish off where I should have started, really, was I was a retrofit coordinator, and I would go into lots of houses and do reports for people, and people got so hung up about fabric, they got so hung up about insulation, that they would spend years wondering, worrying about their house, whether it was suitable, and which was very frustrating. So what we really need to do is get out of this concept that you have to insulate your house first. Why? Because it's fabric insulation is very, very expensive and very, very difficult to do. Anyone who's tried it. So now we're finding actually you can put a heat pump into pretty much any building. So if you're interested in carbon reduction, you go straight for the heat pump. And I'm not just saying that because I work for a heat pump company, because I went through the whole journey of fabric first and insulation and all the worries and all the, oh, should we insulate this wall? Should we do that? Should we do external wall? Should we do an internal wall? Should we do the floor? And it turns out, actually, if you want to go zero carbon for your house, you can do it with a heat pump with much, much less disruption, much, much less cost than trying to do a whole fabric first thing. And in fact, they're calling it fabric fifth now. So fabric is important, but it's definitely, if you want to go low carbon, it's not a prerequisite. It's a nice thing to have, insulation, but yeah, sure, do some draft proofing. Double glazing is good, but the heat pump is route one, and that's why I am doing what I am doing. Otherwise, I would still be out there doing all these reports of people's houses and going to them and they were doing whole house plans for people about what they should do with the house. So that's my journey, personal journey. That's why I hand on heart can say that it's a climate emergency. We've got to get off gas as quickly as possible, and heat pump's the one to do it, in my view. So that's how I feel. I have a heat pump and I love it. It's been super cozy. I've saved some money as well, and it feels really nice. I think you're going to hear a story as well about how cozy it is. It actually is a cozy way to heat a property. Now, have I talked enough? Maybe I have.
Yeah, that was great. Thank you so much. There are a couple questions coming up in the chat, which we're going to jump to later. I've seen the question, but we're just going to go to Anna because we are losing light, and Anna is going to give us a tour of her heat pump. So we're going to do that first, and then we will come back to the questions and pick your brain, Andrew, if that's okay.
Sure.
Yeah, great. So Anna, over to you. I'm going to pin you so that you're nice and visible for everyone. There we go.
Okay. Is it possible to shut down the yes, that's great. So I can see everybody else and can see myself, so I know where I'm gonna. So what we agreed to do is that because the light's going, I'm going to show you our heat pump first, and then Amelia and I are going to have a bit of a chat about our experience of having a heat pump. And yeah, I'll just, without any more introduction, I'm just going to show you. So thank goodness it's not raining. It's raining, so I didn't want to go out there. But so I'm just going out of our back door, and there, I'm not sure you can. So
yeah, we can see it.
See, there's our heat pump. So you can see it's right outside the back door. It's not going at the moment, so you won't be able to hear it. It's been going off and on a little bit today because it's been so cold. So say, I mean, just talking about the insulation, this, so this at the back, what we have got is we put on some cork sole, which is made cork, and it's not like a full external insulation, but it does add quite a bit of just a bit of insulation keeping the heat in. So the other really good thing about it is that when it's hot, it's been really good at keeping the house cool. So and I'm going to show you now. Andrew was showing you all those pictures of little spaces and where you put your so there's the cupboard that we put the heat pump in. Okay, is that possible to see it? Is that?
Yeah, we can see it. That's great. Thank you, Anna.
See the cylinder there, and one thing that's useful here is we dry herbs in
multifunctional. I love it.
Multifunctional, and then I'll show you and then in the cupboard next to that, all the controls. So, and I'm also going to show you there, no gas meter. So the gas meter is gone. We are completely off gas now, and that was really our aim, is to get to a stage where we could completely get off gas. So
yeah, great. Do you know?
I hope that was possible to see it.
Yeah, it was. It's really helpful to see. You see all of these case studies and examples, but it's so helpful to actually see it in someone's home, and especially seeing how you fit it into the cupboard under the stairs. I think gives a really good example of how people could do it themselves. Do you know what kind of heat pump it is? I know Andrew.
So it's an Ecodan. It was an Ecodan. So, okay. But we just had this recommended, and we did a little bit of looking. It seemed like it was a reasonably good one, so we went for it. So we probably didn't do. We're not like ultra geeky at all, so we didn't do loads on loads of research. But I did have the basic understanding about what a heat pump would do, and basically how it worked, the physics of it, if not the actual technology of it.
Yeah. And when did you have it installed?
So we had it installed to July last year. So we've had one whole winter and just going into our second winter.
Great. And how was the winter? How did it feel? We spoke a bit about coziness earlier. It
was really cozy, really lovely. We never used to have our old combi boiler on really, really high. So we find it's actually much cozier than we had with our combi boiler. The thing that's really nice, we just keep the whole house at an even temperature. We don't kind of turn it up or down, and we don't kind of turn the radiators off in different parts of the house. So, which is what we used to do in order to kind of save using a lot of gas. So we just feel really comfortable just leaving it on. And what Andrew was saying about it being slow and steady is absolutely what you need to do. Is just we turn it down a little bit, maybe a couple of degrees at night or just because we don't want it as warm as we would have. But it's very much an even temperature day and night, and throughout the whole house. And it just feels sort of drier and cozier than it used to be. That's yeah, that's how we found it. So
yeah. And you mentioned that it's been keeping you cooler in the summer as well. I think that's something that a lot of people don't realize about heat pumps necessarily.
Yeah, no, actually not the heat pump itself. No, actually that is the cork sole coating that we applied, which is a light color, and I think it just reflects the heat very well. I mean, it's a bit insulating, but I think it's a lot to do with reflecting the heat, and it's west facing this part of the house, so so it's not, no, you can't. Some heat pumps you can, and Andrew, I'm sure you can answer those questions, but not all heat pumps can you use as for air conditioning as well.
Yeah.
And you have to actually put in ducting and things
Yes.
if you want to work well. So we just, that would have cost a lot more money. We didn't think that that was needed. Our house is quite cool. We know how to kind of keep it cool, but the cork sole has made it even cooler.
Yeah, that's great to know. And on the note of the cork sole, I was wondering, so you've done the heat pump and the cork sole, were they standalone measures, or is it part of a wider retrofit journey that you're embarking on?
We have done other measures, but I wouldn't say we haven't done like a really kind of super duper you know, like passive house standard at all. It's just, we've done like just some basic things like, when we've replaced the windows, we've put in good quality draft free and double glazed and good quality and doors that are also, that they're just energy efficient. And we've got some good loft insulation. As I said, the cork sole only on the back because we didn't want to put it on the front because we're in a terrace and sort of visually it wouldn't be good. And I don't think our neighbours have been that pleased.
Yeah.
We just also, like draft proofing, yes. Also just things like, curtains and blinds, insulating blinds. So we've been thinking about those kind of just fairly ordinary measures, but just making sure that it's sensibly insulated, but it's not. We haven't gone on a whole journey of making it airtight or doing any of those kind of things. So it's a normal house. I guess we're normal people. We're normal people.
Yeah.
Normal house. So
yeah. I guess that ties into what Andrew said as well about how you can do it in a normal house. It doesn't have to be passive house standard because those things can scare people off sometimes. So that's really helpful to know. And were there any other measures that you had to do to get ready for the heat pump? Anything, people use this term of heat pump ready. Were there any additional radiators you had to put in?
Yes, 3 radiators were replaced. I mean, the thing is, the radiators were really old. I've been here nearly 30 years, and they were quite old when I moved in. So they were obviously really old. So we didn't really mind replacing them. So 3 radiators, just the bigger, they're just bigger and a little bit wider. 3 rooms. So that was, otherwise it was sufficient. There was one room, the bathroom. We have got electric underfloor heating, so technically it was slightly underpowered, but we just said, well, we can always put that on, and when we want to, and it's not cold at all. And so that was all we had to do in terms of adding to the system. Yeah. And
have there been any other changes that you've noticed since you've had the heat pump installed?
Okay, well, we've certainly saving money. So our bills, if you add together electricity and gas, it's £35 a month less. So that's £420 a year. I think it may be that we've got solar panels. And so I think that we're using that energy that's being generated by the panels very efficiently because the heat pump's on all day and all, so that the electricity we're generating now is going into the heat pump. Whereas before, so that we do get a feed-in tariff for our panels, which is quite good, but it still gets less than we're paying for electricity. So I think that's why we've been able to make a saving.
And did you receive any of the available grants or discounts to help you support?
We did. We got £5,000. Unfortunately, they put it up about a month after we got it installed. They put it up to £7,500. But so we and as Andrew said, it's not cheap it's not that cheap to install. It would, is more expensive than putting in a boiler, but we wanted to do it, and I think over time it will be worth it financially, but that will be over time.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Now I'm going to open up to questions. So Andrew, I'm going to pin you as well. And there's one in the chat already. I don't know if the person who popped it in, there's a few more since I've not been looking. So Greenwich Greenpeace, would you like to unmute yourself and ask the question directly? Yeah.
Oh yes, I do apologise. I don't know why that's come up. I should have noticed and changed it. It's Camilla. I'm also a Selce member. Hello, hello. So it's a really, really basic question, but I think probably something that's at the back of a lot of people's minds. How do pumps pull in warm air from outside if it's really cold, say, you know, -1 or something? How does it work?
Yeah. Okay, so a heat pump is like a fridge. So the heat pump creates something very, very cold, which sucks heat in. Yeah. So when the refrigerant cycle goes down, let's say it goes down to -10 in the heat pump. So it's -10, the air might be -5. So it's still going to suck that heat. Yeah. So if you think of a fridge, it doesn't stop working once it goes down to 0, does it? Because you can keep taking heat from places. You can, you know, a glass of water can get colder, colder, colder. Air can go below 0. So you can keep, basically the refrigerant cycle keeps sucking heat in. In fact, you can go down to -20. It's because they use them in Finland and Canada and, you know, Scandinavia, all these very cold countries. So it's because it's not just grabbing the heat, it's using this refrigerant cycle. It makes something very, very cold, which then as long as it's colder than the surrounding, then that's what moves the heat into the heat pump, and then that's moved into the house.
Great. That's fantastic. Ingenious. Great.
Clever, isn't it?
Can I just add something? Because I just had this insight that, you know, heat pumps and the physics within a heat pump, they're not humans. They don't perceive heat and cold like us. They you know, that even though we think it's really cold, there's still a lot of energy in the atoms outside. And so, you know, obviously if we got down to you know, absolute 0, there wouldn't be any heat, but you know, we don't get anywhere like that. And that was just an insight for me. It's like not to think of it like they're human beings and you know, think of that heat, but they don't think, but they're not using heat in the same way that human is, you know.
He doesn't stop at 0 degrees. It goes right the way down to -273. So you can keep taking heat out of things until it goes to -270. So you've got a long way to go. So we've got this thing of like, oh my God, 0 degrees, that's the end of, that's the heat. But actually, of course, we keep sucking. That's why we get colder as well, because heat keeps moving into the cold thing. So that's why it's just it's the refrigerant cycle basically that does that.
Great, that's really helpful. And thank you, Anna. That's a really helpful way of thinking about it as well. The next question we have is from Penny. There are a couple questions in the chat. Penny, did you want to ask directly to the panel?
Yeah, that'd be great. I can't give you my face, I can. That might be better as well. So the first one was very simple, and I'm sure I know the answer, but it's also for hot water, right?
Definitely.
Lovely.
Yeah,
that's why you can get rid of the gas completely.
Yep.
And the second one, yeah, so we're planning some renovations. And I've been told that until we know exactly how our house is going to be configured, we can't actually get the heat loss survey done. So I don't really know what I'll be in for. Is that actually true, or could I get a survey done and know more or less what we would need to do to achieve it?
Absolutely. So I do the heat calculations for refurbishments, which are about to happen. Not ones that have just happened, but usually ones that are going to happen in 3 months or 6 months. So you send me the plans and you say, we're going to have this is the walls, this is what we're going to do, this is where the kitchen, you know, usually it's a kitchen extension or single story or whatever around the house. And yeah, you can calculate that. And then you know how big the heat pump needs to be, you know how big your radiators need to be. So you can do that in advance. Yes.
Yeah, good, because that's important to do it in advance. Otherwise, we don't really know
Well, you have to,
what we're
because
doing when we do it.
sure. So yeah, we do well, half of our work is from refurbs, because that's the time usually when people think, right, let's have a change. Gas is going out. We're refurbing our house. We're building a kitchen extension or whatever. Let's have a heat pump. So the architect sends us the plans, or you send me the plans. You know, the walls are here like this, the windows are like that. This is what we're doing, and then you do the calculation. Then you know how big a heat pump needs to be, and then of course then we also plan how the pipes are going to come into the house. Sometimes you have a new floor, so okay, we might set them into the floor. You know, so we have to dovetail with what the builders do, and it's a very, very good idea to think about the heat pump while you're doing this refurbishment, or before, not afterwards, because the classic one is people, you know, they especially in London, they do a big glass front thing at the back and all the way across, and they finish it all up, and then of course they think, where's the heat pump going to go? And so it's very good to get in early. So you think, oh, the heat pump's going to go there, this is how the pipes are going to come into the house, but the calculation can be made in advance, very much so.
Lovely, thank you.
Great. The next question we have in the chat is from Geroyd. I don't know if you want to jump on and...
Yeah, sure. I'm not sure if you can see me. I'm in the dark, maybe. I had a general question about maybe people who live on flats who don't have access to a garden or outside space. So, for example, people on a second or third floor. Is it possible? Is there any solution around maybe having a heat pump if you're on? Yeah, if you're not on a ground floor.
It is tricky. I mean, we are doing ground floor and we are doing top floor, but mid floor not so much. And there's also a question of the leasehold and freehold and all that kind of stuff. It's tricky at the moment. There are these new things coming in where you have the heat pump through the window. You have a sort of like a they do them in New York. So it's like instead of an air conditioning unit sort of hanging outside the window, you have basically where heat pump is an air conditioning unit, but it brings in the heat that way. So that might take off. You can also have through the wall. You can, as long as the air, you have an intake air and an outtake air, so you can drill through the walls. So that's another option. You have the heat pump inside. But yeah, it is tricky. It is tricky. Okay. Mid floor. Yeah, there isn't an easy answer there.
Okay.
Only thing, if you can persuade the whole block to do it, obviously that's the thing.
Yes.
Hard work.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Andrew.
Cheers.
And we had another question from Gareth, or two questions, in fact. Gareth, would you like to ask directly, or shall I read them out?
That's fine, although I'm semi-visible, but hello, everyone. We live in the ground floor of an old Victorian house with very thick walls. And we've just started the journey away from gas in having solar panels and a Sunamp phase change water heater. So we run the hot water on sometimes free electricity, but sometimes paid for. And we're eyeing the next phase of getting a heat pump for the heating. But I'm always a bit sort of keen on having backup systems, and the people who installed the phase change water heater were quite happy to say, well, you know, if it breaks, you can just switch back to using the condenser boiler. You have to move a few levers. But I sort of think in those terms for the heating as well. If we had air to air, our place would lend itself to it very well, in that the ceilings are very high and there's some dead ceiling space where ducts could go. And I'm also interested in the ability to turn it into air conditioning, because the thick brick walls mean that it turns into a brick oven in the summer. So in my ideal world, I'd be able to keep the gas central heating in reserve and use the air-to-air to do what it can do. Hence my two questions really. In an air-to-air system, do you have to have units in each room, or is it just generally spread around? And is it possible to have one heat pump serving some air-to-air and some air-to-water? So the old radiator system would now be run on the heat pump.
Yeah.
So sorry, that's turned into a bit of a complex.
That's okay. So air-to-air is a very good concept. It's, for people who don't know, it's exactly the same sort of technology, except that it's you get like an air conditioning unit. It basically, there's a little fan within the radiator which expels the heat. Now, do you have to have one in each room? Not necessarily. If you've got open plan and heat pumps generally, if you do low and slow, so you could actually have one unit. If it's low and slow enough, it could emanate all throughout. But I think some people like the idea of one per room, but it would definitely be worth interesting experimenting. If you have a flat or a lot of open plan area, you can do fewer units than you have rooms, if you see what I mean. And you can, there are more and more systems coming in which can do heating and cooling, of course, and air-to-air and your hot water. So the Daikin are just releasing one where you can do cooling, heating, hot water, and air-to-air unit as well. So yeah, they're starting to mix them all up. And just to talk about cooling, you can always cool with a heat pump. It just depends how much cooling you want to do. So if you want to do a little bit of cooling, you can always get the heat pump to go in reverse. But there's a limit to how much you can do that before you have to worry about condensation on the pipes. But there, as I say, there are systems which cater very much for heating and cooling very specifically. So yeah, there's lots of products. Daikin is the one to look for that air-to-air and some air-to-water. So air-to-air is very efficient as well, very efficient, because it uses a lower flow temperature, because it's using a fan. It's basically a fan assisted. So every time you use a fan to give out heat, it's more efficient because it's blowing the heat, it's helping the heat along. So yeah, do look for. The only thing at the moment, you don't get a grant for air-to-air, but you might soon. You may. Maybe they're going to change, but at the moment you don't get a grant for air-to-air, and you wouldn't get a grant if you keep your gas boiler as well, I'm afraid, because that's the whole point.
Yeah.
Personally, you won't miss your gas, and you won't need to have a whole gas system backup. I mean, that's a sort of fear factor for new technology. It's a bit like saying I'm going to keep my old diesel banger and have my electric car as well, just in case. You know, it's like pretty soon you think, oh, get rid of that old thing. So yeah, you won't need your gas backup, I think. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Personally speaking.
Great. Thank you. I know that Anna has to run off shortly, but I actually had a question for you, Anna, and Andrew as well, because I know you both have heat pumps. A lot of people worry about the sound in the home of having a heat pump. So I wondered if you could just tell us if that's been a factor for you at all.
The heat pump itself is so quiet, you can hardly hear it. You can hear the pump a little bit from the cylinder because we put it very near the kitchen, whereas we often in the kitchen, but that's very minor, and I've got completely used to that. And my neighbors say they've never heard the heat pump. And the other thing, I mean, I don't even mind it, but the other thing is you don't really sit outside when you're using your heat pump, because you're using the heat pump when it's cold. So the noise is absolutely not been a problem at all.
I definitely don't know. Mine is on. It was quite interesting the last couple of days because it's obviously the heating has started to kick in, and I didn't know if my heat pump was on. I literally didn't know. I was starting to think, is it on? Oh yeah, maybe the radiators are getting a little warmer. Oh yeah, and because it really is very, very quiet. To be absolutely honest as well, there are times when they does what is called a defrost cycle in the middle of winter, where for 10 minutes it kind of ramps up a bit, and I said, but that's when it's really cold and for about 10 minutes. But 99.9% of the time, you literally will struggle to hear it, and that's an honest appraisal. Having said that, we still do a noise assessment every time we do an install. You have to, you know, you check how the distance between the heat pump and the neighbour's window. So you know, we still have to take account of that, because, but I think that's a kind of legacy worry from the old days. I don't think that's really an issue much nowadays.
Great. That's really helpful. Anna, feel free to drop off whenever you have to. I'm just going to see if does anybody else that's in the call have any other questions at all that they either want to put in the chat or just unmute themselves and jump into. Yes, great, go for it. Oh, the sound isn't working. We can't hear you. You're not on mute, but we can't hear you.
Can you write it? Can you write it in the chat? We can't hear you.
Yeah.
But you could write it.
I will read it out on your behalf. In the meantime, while you're typing that out, I had what I hope is a really short question, which is, you said that there needs to be space around the heat pump, and then mentioned that you have strawberries growing on top. So I was wondering, it's fine to have plants on top. They're not blocking the flow.
Yeah, so it's not something that you're really supposed to do. I made a little structure around it, and then you can there's air that still can go at the back, and then have slats as well. So you have to monitor it. You can't just box it in. I mean, if we could really box heat pumps in, there would be, we'd sell 1 million a week. But yeah, so you can do slats. You have to be clever about it, and it's also something I wouldn't professionally recommend, because the heat pump says, oh, you know, you've got to have this, you've got to have that, and the clearances and all that kind of stuff. But in practice, I've done it.
Okay, cool, good to know. We're still
I don't know if Joanne's ready. Is she coming through? I've got one question. Before or after, I don't mind. I think something's come through.
Yeah, so it says, I thought there would be information I could share with leaseholders and tenants. So information collection to share. So I guess the question, and nod or shake your head at me, is what information would there be to leaseholders as opposed to freeholders and tenants in accessing heat pumps? So I don't know, Andrew, if you have any experience working with either landlords or freeholders or leaseholders.
That's right. Well, I mean, it's all about the grant, isn't it? So £7,500. No one wants to blow that. So, and that would be organised through, I'm pretty sure, the landlord. Yeah. So you'd have to have your landlord to say yes, he wants to do a heat pump. Now the landlord might want to, because it does reduce the EPC. I mean, increase the EPC rating. So you know, you could say to your landlord, look, why don't you increase your EPC rating and put a heat pump in? But yeah, the grant goes via, I mean, the landlord wouldn't keep the grant, because the heat pump installation would probably be more than 7,500, very likely. But it's more like putting gentle pressure on the freeholders of the building to either gather together to get one heat pump, to do a community heating thing, which would be amazing in a big block, or try and get your landlord to put one in. And it is worth saying, and it is true, as Anna was saying, it really is it is cozier, because it's a cozier experience living in a place heating. And everyone says this about heat pump, and it's genuine, because you're doing this low and slow heating. All the rooms are gently heated. You're not getting hot and cold and whacking on, turning off. It is actually a comfortable experience. So if landlords knew that their tenants would be more comfortable and happier, that's quite a good selling point, I think.
Yeah, and I think also, if in the case where the freeholder of a building is the council, or the landlord is the council, then local authorities can access additional funding called the Social Housing Decarbonisation Fund to do things like a heat network. And in general, in our experience, the groups and buildings that have those things done tend to be where there's a really active residents or tenants group who have been pestering the council about it. So if you want to, are you in Southeast London? We're just working on a MIME network at the moment. My email is going to be at the end. Pop me an email and I can have a look at it. If it's one of the councils we have a relationship with the team, we can put you in touch, because there may already be plans for your building. There are always projects in the works with the local authorities. So I hope that gives an overview answer to your question, even in spite of the technical difficulties.
And maybe we can share the presentation, the PDF.
Yes, yeah, we will. Yeah. Camilla, did you have one last question before we
just very quickly, thank you. We've tried to insulate our house as much as possible, but we've got big windows and double glazing is going to cost an absolute fortune. Do I take it then that if we're sort of semi-drafty, that we'd need a bigger heat pump, and therefore that would cost us more because it would be taking more energy from the system? Is that basically the bottom line?
Well, yeah, if you need a bigger heat pump, it will cost a little more, but actually the difference it sometimes isn't huge. So for instance, the Valent 5 kilowatt compared to the 7 kilowatt is, I don't know, I think another £500 or something. So compared to spending 50,000 on, you know, all the bits and pieces you can do on a whole retrofit of a house, it's pretty cost efficient.
But in terms of energy bills themselves,
yeah, if you insulate your house more, whether it doesn't make any difference, the heat pump or gas or oil or whatever, obviously you're going to save more energy if you're insulated.
Yeah.
But making the decision to get a heat pump isn't to do with insulation.
Okay.
It doesn't really affect it.
Okay.
So this is why I'm encouraging people not to get too hung up on this whole retrofit project and the whole thing. It's good to, yes, insulate where you can, like Anna was saying. If you could do a little bit of insulation, draft proofing, yes, if you can. If you can do double glazing, great. But maybe just do thermally lined curtains or secondary glazing. You just do what you can, but make sure you get a heat pump, because we can't spend years and years scratching our heads about a fabric of the building and shall we do this, shall we do that, when you're still burning gas. So do some simple cost-effective measures to reduce drafts, etc., etc. But make sure you get a heat pump. That's the thing. We've got to get into that mindset that you know, decarbonisation in the house is absolutely to do with first principles, which is not burn gas and put a heat pump. So we did a big 4-story house in North London, famous cabinet minister, single glazing, solid brick. We just, you know, we put a heat pump in.
Are his initials EM by any chance?
They might be.
Oh gosh, so he's walking his talk, which is good to know.
Yes, yes. I have to let people guess.
Right. Penny just has another question quickly. Bye, Anna. Thank you so much for joining us. So Penny, did you want to jump on and ask your question?
Oh yeah, hello. Thank you guys for this, by the way. This is really useful. It's about whether, so you know, with combi boilers, it's difficult to run 2 showers at a time. And so lots of people recommend getting the mega flow water systems. How does the water side of this compare to those options? Can you run 2 showers together off this system?
Yeah, so there's no difference. Obviously with a heat pump, you have to have a hot tank. You know, you can't run it like a combi. It's not powerful enough to be able to do a shower, you know, directly from the heat pump. You have to store the hot water. So that's just kind of one of the things. So once you've got a hot tank, the same rules apply then to a gas or oil or whatever. about how much water you've got, how much pressure you've got, how many showers you can have at once. So it's not it's not a heat pump issue, if you see what I mean. A heat pump is, you've got to have a hot tank, but after that, then I mean, you know, people with gas boilers over the last number of years, they still go, oh, can we have 2 showers at once? You know, water pressure here, there, everywhere. So, but that's not a heat pump dependent problem. That's just a hot water problem to do with your pressure, or how many showers you want, or how much hot water you need.
So it would be really exactly the same as having a conventional old-fashioned hot water tank with a cold water tank in the loft.
Yeah, there's no difference. There's no difference.
Okay, lovely. Thank you.
Because it's still a hot tank under pressure. So you know, when we put in a hot tank, you connect up to mains pressure.
Yeah.
You heat up the hot tank, and you use the hot water, then you replenish it. So it's exactly the same.
Can you also add an accumulator to it, like you would? So all the same.
That's it. So we add an accumulator. You could say that the reheat is slightly slower, so it might take, but that again, that varies as well. And you can always have an immersion if you want. So it's the same issues. People for years have had issues with, oh, mum, dad, we run out of hot water, you know. So you still have to kind of balance that, but that's not really a heat pump issue. That's just, you know, big families needing too much hot water all at once.
Great.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you so much, everyone, for your questions, and thank you to Andrew and Anna, who's now left us, for your insights. Just before we wrap up, I just want to tell you a little bit about a few things that are coming up, and also where you can go to get some support with some of the things we've spoken about. So as I mentioned, I'm part of the Future Fit Homes team, which is Selce's project trying to support people to get their homes fit for the future. If you are a Lewisham or Greenwich resident, Lewis, Greenwich, Lambeth, or Newham even, then either us or Repairing London can support you with advice and grant eligibility assessments. So please do scan here or go to this bit.ly link here to register your interest for a call back. So please get in touch and we can see how we can support you on your journey for all things retrofit. So not just heat pumps, if you want to have a look at some other aspects as well. And this is part of a series. So we've spoken a little bit about Fabric First, and it's something that gets spoken about, but not everyone necessarily knows what it means. So our next webinar is going to be demystifying the different approaches to retrofit. So looking at whole house plans, Fabric First, passive house, all these different things. What do they mean? We're going to have some experts and some architects come along and talk to us and share their insight. So you'll be able to register through Eventbrite, the same place that you registered for this one, and we'll send out a follow-up email that has details to that. And Andrew mentioned earlier that you're on Nesta because people need to see and hear a heat pump to see how it works, which ties in perfectly to our next series of events, which is we've got some eco home tours going on. So we have 2 coming up. We've got one on Sunday, October the 13th at Annie's house in Forest Hill, and one on Saturday, November the 9th at Emma's house in Deptford. And both of those homes have heat pumps, slightly different types. You can see the details of exactly what types of heat pump they have, what types of home they have, and see if either of those would be helpful for you. The idea is you come along, get a tour, see the heat pump in action, as well as their other retrofit measures, and get to ask the people questions in their home. So you can see the details of that and future webinars and all the other events we have coming up on selce.org.uk/events. So that is everything from us. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming, for your questions, for your enthusiasm. And thank you so much to Andrew for sharing your expertise, and to Anna for sharing her experience. It was really lovely to see you all, and I hope to see you at another webinar soon.
Right. Econic heat pumps as well.
Oh, yes.
Econic.
There we go. We'll send out in the follow-up email that will have all the details, will be the slides with Andrew's contact details as well there, so you can get in touch. So yeah, thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, David. Good to see you.